Okay, I think we should get started. Welcome to our May Parks, Recreation, Open Space Commission meeting. First, have the next item is the roll call.
You're muted, Eva.
Rookie mistake. Commissioner Beal.
Present.
Commissioner Kent.
Here.
Commissioner Mendries.
Here.
Commissioner Price.
Here.
Commissioner Frank.
Here.
And Chair Martin.
Here.
It looks like Commissioner Abbott is not arrived yet. So.
Okay, item 2 on the agenda is approval of minutes. I'm not seeing a link to that on the agenda, but so I don't know if we can really approve that this meeting. Maybe we need to approve them at the next meeting.
I hadn't realized that they weren't attached to that.
Yeah, I didn't realize either.
I could probably post them real quick. Isabel, would that be okay? Share my screen.
They probably should be part of the packet 72 hours ahead of time. So
Yes.
I think we'll skip this and go back to that. Bring it back to the at the next meeting.
Okay.
So we'll just
Apologize for that.
2 sets at the next meeting. Okay. Next up is item 3 on the agenda, public comment for persons desiring to address the commission, committee, board. Item is not on the agenda. Each speaker is limited to, let me see how many people have their hands raised for this one.
We have 2 members of the public.
Okay.
3.
3. This is for items not on the agenda, so not related to the master plan, not related to trees that are on the thing. Okay, so that'll be 3 minutes. And the Brown Act limits the committee's ability to take and or discuss items that are not on the agenda. Therefore, such items are normally referred to staff for comment or to a future agenda. So staff, if you could let the first person in. Is that Susan Schwartz? Looks like you're on.
Susan?
Yes, thanks. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes. I'm Susan Schwartz, president of Friends of Five Creeks. Thanks for this opportunity to fill you in on what we've been doing in Albany. Let's see how much I can get into 3 minutes. Since I last came in February, we've used the gradual reopening to lead small groups on nature walks on Cerrito and Codornices Creek. 2 more are scheduled next weekend, one with Albany historian Karen Sorensen. They're both full, but we'll do them again. The Codornices Creek walks are introducing people to apps they can use to identify plants and animals while also contributing to scientific knowledge. The April Cerrito Creek walk focused on our 3rd set of temporary pop-up small signs along the creeks. This set was done by our Albany High School interns. They designed and wrote them. They tell folks about the ways Native Americans use plants that you'll see along the creek. These 6 high school interns since February also built a habitat pile to attract and protect small animals. They experienced field science, observing and reporting pollinators, sampling sediments to monitor wildlife through shed DNA, and sampling annual grasses to measure greenhouse gas emissions using isotopes. In hardscape projects, this week, we firmly anchored our new vandal-resistant closed cigarette urn at the spot where University Village smokers come to puff next to Codornices Creek, just outside the housing boundaries. We hope this means that this area will no longer be paved by butts scattered by homeless people rummaging, desperate for a nicotine fix. We thank Albany Public Works for installing the inscribed planks we paid for, repairing the bench in Creekside Park, honoring Ruth Menichetti, our vice president and the longest serving ever member of your commission. We cleaned graffiti off interpretive signs. We devised a way to keep pranksters from overturning the portable toilet we paid for on Codornices Creek. One of our young professional interns has just about finished rehabbing the rain gardens at 6th Street on Codornices Creek. We're now looking for ways to deal with what seem to be construction flaws that cause these to not reduce pollution adequately and also lead to street flooding. We investigated a mysterious die-off of crayfish in Codornices Creek. We learned a lot, but we're never going to find the cause. Most important, with only individuals in small groups, we've managed to keep up with fire-prone French broom on Albany Hill, invasive Algerian sea lavender on the Albany bulb, bindweed and allergy-causing pellitory and poisonous Italian lords and ladies on Codornices Creek, smothering Cape Ivy and evergreen thornless blackberry trying to make a comeback on Cerrito Creek, and many, many others. The resilient, drought-tolerant, pollinator-friendly natives we've planted and nurtured over the years are flowering along the creeks. Cerrito Creek and the meadows at the foot of Albany Hill are particularly beautiful, in great measure thanks to our 15 years of hard labor to bring that area back. Codornices Creek is coming along. I hope you will visit. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next up is Deborah. You're on.
Hello, nice to be back. So my name is Deborah Bernhardt. Thanks for letting me speak. I just wanted to briefly say that I have been very involved in working very hard with other folks to lobby for pickleball courts. And I am not in all the details of master planning, et cetera, but it seems like we might be getting left out. And that's the last thing. We do not want to be left out. So we wanted to revisit this tonight by saying that. And, you know, we spent 2.5 years working on this, getting lots of money donated, and even my own daughter, who's a landscape architect, did the drawings for the courts. And I just don't know what's happening. But then there was COVID, of course. And I just wanted to say pickleball is growing faster than we could keep up. And the court time waits are getting extreme everywhere. And I would hope that the city of Albany, I'm a resident here, I hope that the city of Albany, the rec department and the council would honor the strong community needs for pickleball. And the last thing I want to say is I was just at Montclair in Oakland. There was a grand opening for 4 pickleball courts that took only maybe 6 months for them to do. And there were over 120 people at the grand opening, ribbon cutting. It was a blast. There were 36 paddles hanging for people waiting to play for over a 3-hour period. I mean, this is like a no-brainer. And I just really hope and pray that the city of Albany will honor this strong need for seniors, children, and all of us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next up, Susan, you're on.
Yes, hi, I'm Susan Moffatt, founder of Love the Bulb, and I want to warmly invite all of the commissioners and staff to come see the exhibition and audio tour that my UC Berkeley students have created. It's called Monument to Extraction, and it uses the Albany bulb as an observatory from which to think about California history. And there are 8 installations and a downloadable audio tour and augmented reality. And you'll learn about the history of Chinese labor in the dynamite factories, really interesting history of University Village, including a lot of things that a lot of people don't know. Histories of brick manufacturing, residential segregation, and the ways that all of this connects Albany to landscapes around California and histories of mining. So if you go to monumenttoextraction.org, you can download the audio tour and the augmented reality, and the website has a lot of history on it as well. So I just want to warmly invite everybody to that. It's been fun to see people enjoying that. And second, I'd like to invite everybody out to see the native plant garden at the Bulb. I want to thank a couple of the commissioners for their help with weeding and keeping up that garden. There's a lot of flowers, sticky monkey flower in bloom, Cleveland sage. A lot of the natives are doing really great. So I hope you all can come out and enjoy that garden. And finally, please keep your eye out for the concerts that we are going to have coming up on May 1st. We had the Sol Quartet perform 12 brand new compositions that were commissioned by this wonderful string quartet during COVID. And it was just a beautiful walking outdoor concert that a lot of people enjoyed, and we'll have more coming up. So I just wanted to invite everybody to follow what we're doing, and also just say, thanks to Susan Schwartz and Friends of Five Creeks for all of their amazing work. I think all of this just shows what a wonderful, wonderfully involved volunteer community we have in Albany. I think it's such an important part of the way that people enjoy and keep up the parks. So thank you. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Looks like we have one more. Okay, John, you're on.
Thank you so much. My name is John Winnett, and I just wanted to follow up on Susan's comments, briefly saying to introduce myself. I'm the co-director of Alternating Currents, a project which presents out of doors live performance events, and has done a couple of projects out at the Bulb. But just want to commend all of you and congratulate all of you on having an extraordinary public space. It's unique both in the Bay Area and perhaps nationwide, with its natural and cultural attractions. It really is, I can't think of anything comparable. And the only place I can think of that I hold in as high a regard is over on the island of Manhattan. It's the High Line, which some of you may know. It's a project that resuscitated an abandoned elevated subway track. But we are very, very lucky to have the Bulb in the Bay, and I appreciate all you do to continue to maintain its unique character. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Looks like we have one more. Joshua, you're on.
Hello. Hi. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Hi. Okay, so I am also an advocate for the Albany Bulb, and an intern for a Facebook group called We Love the Bulb. It's growing every day, and as someone who grew up in Albany and used to live in Albany, I never really appreciated the place until I left for college and came back. And, there was a lot of changes I've noticed. And yeah, even though there were many ideas of what could have been done in the Albany Bulb, whether it was to build over the place or to clear it out for natural ecological restoration, I and many other people in the city of Albany, not only in the city of Albany, but the Bay Area and California, and sometimes even in other states and other countries, have appreciated the Albany Bulb. And some ideas and some things that I would like to continue seeing for the Albany Bulb would be is to see it continue be a wild and quirky place where people can, express their freedom of art, music, and just being able to be an open space. And also, I would like to see, instead of throwing away or discarding what's left of the materials left in the Albany Bulb, I would hope to see the materials be left of what's there, and to allow artists to create art and let people just build whatever things they want of what's left of what's there. Yeah. And maybe even like partner with the local art clubs or organizations. I know like growing up in Albany, there was tons of art clubs, organizations, and maybe even have the Albany Unified School District to suggest having their art teachers bring their students out to the bulb and check it out, and maybe have art projects, do some art projects over there. So yeah, I really appreciate the city kind of like keeping it the way it is. And I think many landmarks around the world were not intended to be landmarks, such as, Salvation Mountain down in Southern California, or the Gum Wall in Seattle. And I think Albany Bulb is really just preserving the Albany Bulb while maintaining the art there is a great addition of the many things that Albany has to offer. And I think keeping Albany Bulb will intend more people to visit, which will help, the economy, the local economy of the city as well. So yeah, thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next. So Kathryn, you're on.
Oh, hi. I'm Kathryn Stein. I'm an Albany resident. I live off of Pierce Street in the Gateview complex, and I joined a little late, so I'm hoping this is the time for open comment on the master plan updates. No, okay, so is that coming later?
Well, this is the time for comments on anything that's not on the agenda, and in just a few minutes, it'll be the time to comment on the master plan.
Oh, fantastic. I will hold my comments until then, but also just express some appreciation for everybody talking about the bulb. It's awesome and fantastic. And we got out there last week for the Del Sol Quartet, and it was so fantastic. So I really am a fan of continuing to activate the bulb and the city supporting that.
Okay, thank you. All right. So I think that's our...
We have one more, Brian, sorry. Joshua?
Joshua?
Oh, sorry, I didn't realize my hand was still up. It was supposed to, yeah, I'm done.
I thought you already spoke, yeah. Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, so next up on the agenda is item 4, announcements, staff and committee member announcements, reports and updates of status of previous agenda items. And I have one, which is I presented our work plan to the city council a week or two ago at their regular meeting, and along with the Arts Commission. And there's good news and bad news. So the good news is the commission voted to approve our work plan with no modifications at all. It's not really bad news, but it's kind of interesting that there was one commissioner who had some really good points about trying to make the work plans clearer, and that's Vice Mayor Jordan, and also to really focus on like what do the commissions think they can really do in the 2 years and prioritize. And so he had some, goals for all those, and it passed without any modifications due to that, with his dissenting vote. And then I looked at the agenda for this Monday's city council meeting, and so we are on the agenda, so to speak. Our work plans going back like 10 years are the case study for Parks and Rec work plans for the city council to review and discuss changes to. So our work plans are kind of the poster child for what, like how they want to move away from, I guess, the case study. So I think ours is even actually better than it was previous years and cleaned up and clarified, but I think there's room for improvement. And I think there's some great suggestions there that I'm looking forward to when we actually revise our work plan after the master plan work is done. I look forward to sprucing it up according to whatever guidelines that come down from the city council on Monday or soon after that. And then Brian Beal, you had your hand up.
Yeah, and actually, before I get into this, a Brown Act question with the staff. So I was going to comment on the fact that I went on the monument extraction tour, but because Susan just talked about it in open comment, does that mean I can't talk about it, or can I still say a word about it?
I think if you attended as a resident,
Okay.
that's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we weren't violating the other rule that we're not supposed to. So at Susan's invitation, I went on this tour, and I was pleasantly surprised. I thought it was, just going to be about the bulb. In fact, it went into the history of the entire East Bay area and how extraction has impacted the history. But also, I think affordable housing advocates would find this tour very informative because it discusses the history of the Cordoneses village and the racism that was involved in the history and how that led to the affordable housing. So I would highly recommend this tour if I could do so. I'm violating the Brown Act. And thank you so much for this. Is just a really great thing for college students to be involved in. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Other announcements?
I had two announcements. I wanted to just notify the commission that the sugar sweetened beverage recommendations are going to council special session on May 17th at 5 p.m. and you're all welcome to join. They will go over the recommendations that you put forth. So there's that. And then I have a bittersweet announcement too. I wanted to let you all know that actually my last day in Albany will be May 25th. And I just wanted to thank you all for your support over the years and all the hard work you've done. It's been a joy. So that's my second announcement.
Okay. And I wanted to announce our gratitude for your work on the commission and stepping in and getting up to speed and doing so many different things over the years with the city. I don't even know what they all are, and I hope that gets recognized by the city at some point.
Thank you. Thank you. And Isabel will be taking over, so you guys are in good hands and it will move along seamlessly, I know. So.
Okay, next item is the big one, item 5.1, Parks, Recreation, Open Space Master Plan Update, Kickoff Presentation. Groundworks Office will present the Parks, Recreation, Open Space Master Plan Update Scope, Schedule, and Analysis completed to date. Recommendation is to receive information and provide input.
And I'll just quickly introduce David and Brennan from Groundworks. We're so excited to have you both here, and we're excited to see your kickoff presentation. And with that, I'll let you guys take it from here.
Great, thank you. I'm not sure we want to work on this anymore, actually, now that you're leaving. No, anyways, it's sad to hear that you're leaving, and but we wish you well in your next voyage. I want to thank all of your commissioners, the commissioners, for your time. I am a Parks and Rec commissioner for the city of Berkeley. We had our meeting last night, 3.5 hours. So I'm very thankful of your time and as you sit on a commission and try to improve your parks. My name is Brennan Cox. I'm a founding partner at Groundworks Office. We are in Berkeley. I live and work in Berkeley and like to consider myself sort of a part-time Albany resident. Our team consists of 2 other people, and Dave Koo is on the phone or is on the call as well. And then Ramon, I think, is on the call as well. And we are kind of leading this process with you. The caller, there was an earlier comment about that she might have missed the conversation about the master plan, but that's contrary. We are just starting. David is going to kind of walk you through a slide deck that we have put together, kind of outlining the process as we are starting to move forward. It consists of kind of 4 tasks that we have. and that this whole entire process is intended to last anywhere, it's about 6 to 7 months. And this is really only our first of what we hope to as many meetings with you all, and in many variety of ways that we're hoping to solicit comments and input from all of the community. So we're really excited to start this process. And I think, David, why don't you take it away, and we'll go from there.
Great. I just want to check on the visual that everything's in full screen, and great. Okay, so hi, my name is David Koo. I'm an associate at Groundworks office, and I'm excited to present the first phase of our master plan update. Just to present the agenda for today, we'll review our scope and schedule for the master plan. We'll review some of the tasks completed in the learn phase, our first phase. We'll review the Albany Parks report card. We'll share the list of initial policies, projects, and programs that we think should be included into the master plan update. And if there's time, we'll talk about the next phase and just preview it. Just to start off, our vision for this process is to create a vision that's bold for the park system, a process that's very accessible, not just for non-native English speakers, but for those who aren't so tech savvy. And we really want to use this master plan as a celebration, as a branding campaign of the unique parks that we have in Albany. Like Brendan mentioned, there are 4 phases for this master plan update. We're nearing the completion of our learn phase, and we're spending a lot of time reviewing existing policies, programs, and projects to build that initial list of projects that we might include into the master plan update. In the next phase, in June and July, we'll be workshopping this list of projects with the community, with key stakeholders, via community workshops. Then we'll evaluate that list of projects, looking at feasibility, looking at finances, thinking about prioritization. And then in our final phase, implement, we'll develop a funding and phasing strategy. Here are some of the key dates that we'll have during the master plan process. There's a lot, many more, but I just wanted to share these few key dates today. We're officially launching our community outreach today. We've scheduled 2 community workshops, one in June on Sunday, June 13th at 5 p.m., most likely a Zoom meeting. Workshop number 2 will happen during the Pros Commission meeting in July at the same time, 7 p.m. And we have a 3rd workshop scheduled in August. The date hasn't been finalized, but we will get that nailed down soon enough. And then just wanted to mention some of the milestones that we see for this master plan update. We'll be helping out with the Prop 68 grant funding application. We'll be helping you all with updating your PROS work plan, and we will be seeking City Council approval. So again, we're nearing the completion of our learn phase. These are just some of the tasks that we're completing or in near completion. We did a basic demographic analysis. We're identifying key stakeholders. We've been reviewing projects, programs, and policies. We've created a branding strategy for social media engagement and for community outreach. We're developing a community survey. We've just done some initial site visits, and we feel like we need to do many more. And today we're presenting our progress on these tasks. Like I said, we think that Albany has one of the more unique park systems in the Bay Area. So we really want to celebrate the park system. So we've been working with developing a graphic and branding language to help kind of facilitate this process and get more folks in the community excited for this process. Some key demographic information to understand about the Albany residents and park users. We looked at age, population growth, race, and persons with disabilities, just as key demographic indicators. We're excited that a quarter of the population are under 18, meaning that there might be just a bigger group of kids who like playing on playgrounds and like running outdoors. We also recognize that there is an older population as well, so trying to accommodate those types of passive recreation fit for senior citizens might help us as we plan for the future of our parks. The other kind of key indicator I wanted to point out was population growth. As the city's growing, we have to keep up with the demand for parks and recreation. Currently, we have a ratio of 2.27 acres per 1,000 Albany residents. With the recent updated Albany General Plan for 2035, the projection is roughly 20,300 residents who will be living in Albany. And to keep up with, just to even keep up with that ratio for parks per 1,000 residents, we would have to add additional 18 acres of rec land. Now, this is a really ambitious goal, and I think we have to be really creative to achieve this goal. But I think it's a really great goal to keep in mind as we expand the park system. For the purpose of the master plan update, we are looking at parks that are owned by the city of Albany. These are the 11 that we've identified here. Not to mention that there are countless trails, pedestrian improvements that are also part of the park system. Just to refresh your memory on what was passed in 2004, the 3 bigger projects that have completed were the renovations to Ocean View Park, Jules Terrace Park, and Memorial Park. Now, the Albany 2035 General Plan has identified additional projects, the Ohlone Greenway, trying to find recreational opportunities and other improvements along that route. The key route median seems to be a reoccurring project theme, creating passive opportunities along the key route boulevard. Peggy Thompson Pierce Street Park is one of the newer parks to Albany. Expanding the recreation and programming opportunities there was highlighted in the 2035 General Plan. And then the continual management of the Cornices Creek Trail System, Cerrito Creek Trail System, and all the improvements that are going into the Albany Hill, somehow finding opportunities to support and implement those plans were highlighted in the general plan. And then the opportunities to expand the park system through non-traditional means, parklets, pocket parks, roof gardens, and publicly owned private spaces were also mentioned. In addition to the 2004 master plan update and the 2035 general plan, there are additional planning projects. As I mentioned, the 2012 Albany Hill Creekside Master Plan, the Albany Neck and Bulb Transition Study that's undergoing planning efforts, and then the Voices to Vision community engagement pieces to think about what to do along the Albany waterfront. Citywide, we have the Climate Action Plan 2.0. I've mentioned the Parks and Recreation and open space elements in the general plan, but also the land use element, the Albany Active Transportation Plan, as well as the Public Art Master Plan. So all of these policy documents, we're still working on this policy matrix, but reviewing each policy document and seeing how they relate to the overall parks and open space system, as well as individual parks. As a big portion of our learn phase for the master plan update has been visiting each of the parks in the Albany park system and giving them a grade in terms of how they're being maintained and how the recreational opportunities exist. This is a quick sketch of our itinerary of how we biked through the park system, trying to understand if we could stitch together the park system through a bike and pedestrian infrastructure network. There are clear gaps in the system, and it'd be exciting to begin to talk about how we could fill in those gaps. We looked at 5 themes across the park system: environmental beautification, recreational programming, equipment and facilities, art, culture, and historic resources, connectivity, and accessibility. And we gave them A for excellent, B for satisfactory, C for needs improvement, D for unsatisfactory. And again, this was an initial grade that we gave, and by no means a scientific approach. So I'll just run quickly through our park system. The Albany bulb, again, I think it's a really beautiful park space, and it's hard not to over plan or over design the Albany bulb system. Personally, we think that it should remain as is, but also we recognize that there are maintenance agreements with the East Bay Regional Park District as well as the state of California. So working with those agencies for their respective properties is key. Really, I think trying to find opportunities to improve existing equipment and facilities there, bike racks, trash bins, and signage is an opportunity, as well as strengthening the connection for the rest of the city to the Bay Trail as well as the Albany bulb. Albany Hill also has kind of the stitching of privately owned and publicly owned property. We know that the Creekside Master Plan is currently being implemented. Here we think opportunities for signage to tell stories about the site's history, as well as celebrating the ongoing volunteer efforts. I think like a community message board would be perfect for Albany Hill Park. We think the newer benches that are being installed, the gentleman here having coffee, sitting on that log shape for a bench is fantastic. I think wherever possible, upgrading the existing benches to that bench would be ideal. Ocean View Park, again, just another well-made, well-managed park that we recognized. We think that there's, if anything, an opportunity to include additional programming for underutilized portions of the park, and overall improving connectivity and accessibility, and if not, additional art and history and cultural resources. Memorial Park, another well-used, very popular park. One thing that we noticed was the play equipment had tons of kids on it, and it's no surprise that some of the rubber surface is coming apart. So clearly there is a demand for expanding some of the park's facilities and maintaining the existing park facilities for future users. Dartmouth Tot Lot, just a very small park, yet Sarah, who is a mother who was watching her daughter play there, thought that it was such an essential park for the neighborhood. Lots of nannies and caretakers used the park on Monday through Fridays during the work week. So really just shows you how essential it is for the workforce. Generally, we thought that the trees and the undergrowth were really beautiful. There might be an opportunity to upgrade some of the benches. We sat on quite a few benches during our site visit, and we thought that the ones pictured here were a little bit too high and angled awkwardly and was slightly uncomfortable. So there might be an opportunity to upgrade bench seating for parents. We also noticed that there was a lot of sand coming out of the sand pit, and we noticed that there was a broom there. So facilitating sand retention at the sand pits and providing just basic equipment for parents to just clean up after their park use would be ideal. And then we think, upgrading the existing murals or adding additional art would be a great opportunity for the tot lot. Jules Terrace Park, just a really nice neighborhood park. We had the pleasure of talking with Daniel and Casa, who were sitting at the picnic tables. They mentioned that the picnic tables were a little bit overheated due to the trees being cut down. So finding opportunities for shade and comfort might be an opportunity. We noticed that there was a half-court basketball court there. Perhaps an opportunity there is to upgrade that basketball court facility. We know that there are some ponding and flooding issues at that corner, so addressing that would also be an opportunity. And then there was just a moment where we biked past the park and had no idea that we did. So along the Francis Street side of the park, pulling that signage closer and showing that that actually is an entrance to the park is another opportunity. Better directional signage to the park entrance would also be an opportunity. And then we have Ohlone Greenway, again, very popular, lots of opportunities for recreation, both passive and active. We had the pleasure of talking with Albert, who during COVID was eager to get back into the gym. He did a map search on fitness equipment, and the Ohlone Greenway popped up, so he really liked it. He's actually a San Pablo resident, so he actually drove out to the Ohlone Greenway. I mean, generally, I think we're all familiar with the Ohlone Greenway. It's a really functional and yet beautiful greenway system. We think that given that there are so many successful programs along the Greenway, there just is an opportunity to add a few more key locations. I think it's really important to balance the openness of the Greenway and finding opportunities for great active and passive recreation. The nature park was really popular while we're biking down the Greenway. Probably some better signage just to show that folks who are cutting through the Greenway recognize that they're in Albany, and pointing and providing more directional signage for users to explore more of Albany would be an opportunity. Peggy, Thompson, Pierce Street Park, the newest park to Albany. We really think that there's an opportunity for additional urban forestry, adding some native planting to the slopes. We realize there are lots of desire lines from the top of the hill cutting into the playground and into the park below. So trying to formalize those pathways would be an opportunity. We know that there's opportunities for connections to both Albany Hill as well as the rest of the SF Bay Trail. So finding an opportunity to connect those two would be ideal. Again, because there's so many kids coming to the park, adding more art and history would be great. Key Route Median along Key Route Boulevard has consistently come up in various policy documents from 2004's master plan update to the active transportation plan. We really think that the opportunity here is to put some passive pathways through the median. There's lots of mature trees, so trying to work around those trees will be a challenge. However, the pocket park at Solano Avenue and Ohlone Greenway, where the Shrine of Freedom monuments are, is a wonderful start to the median system, and connecting that intersection to the rest of the median would really just draw the energy from the Albany Greenway up Keystone Boulevard as a trail pathway. And the I-80 Caltrans underpass, we recognize that this is a potential site for a future park. These are just some of the images that I collected while on site. I think learning what the limitations are of the site to better interface with Caltrans will be a challenge. However, I think that's a nice way to update the master plan. The creek trails, we recognize that there's lots of improvements that are ongoing, lots of plans that are ongoing, and clearly lots of love from the volunteers putting their energy into these trail systems. We really think that they're a part of the park system because they connect to so many different parks in the city of Albany. So improving those wherever possible will be a great opportunity. And then the cut-throughs, Manor Way and Catherine's Walk really just shows you the volunteers who and the property owners on either side with their landscaping and planting improvements, trying to continue the maintenance and improvements for these two cut-throughs will be important. So this is our initial list of projects, policies, and programs that we wanted to share with you. Again, we haven't talked to any stakeholders or the community at large. So, we're excited to start that process in the next phase. But just reviewing that we have opportunities at Peggy, Thompson, Pierce Street Park, adding improvements and additional programming at Albany Greenway, discovering and developing a trail alignment for key route median, finding improvements and understanding site conditions at the freeway underpass, again, adding segments to the trails for the creeks, continuing the implementation and necessary improvements at Albany Hill, and then minor improvements and additional programming at Dartmouth, Jewel Terrace, Ocean View, and Memorial Park. We also thought that it would be important to share our knowledge about best management practices for topics related to the park system, whether it's public arts and monuments, signage and wayfinding. I know that's a topic that is coming up in the PRO's work plan. Developing a way to phase in and phase out playgrounds, providing assistance and research on low maintenance planting and urban forestry, discovering new active recreation, discovering new passive recreation, discovering park furnishings that need to be upgraded, and overall providing maintenance, planning, and schedule. And we would love for the community as well as you commissioners to add to this list, to remove from this list, and really work with you in the next phase to refine this list.
Okay, thank you. So does that complete the presentation by Groundworks?
Yes, we could preview the next phase, but if the commissioners would like to just discuss what I've presented thus far.
Dave, why don't just interrupt? Why don't you quickly go through the next 3 slides and explain kind of our process going into the workshop phase, and then I think having a larger discussion with the commissioners would be good.
Awesome. Also, we've just launched our website and we have made our social media live, so please follow us for those who are listening at home. So yes, the next phase is workshop, and it will happen between June and July. This is kind of the suite of our community involvement toolkit. We'll be utilizing Zoom workshops until the County of Alameda says it's fine to carry in-person public community meetings. We'll be developing our online survey and launching that at the end of this month. Our project website is live, and we are starting to do social media engagement. One thing we would like to do with social media engagement is to celebrate you commissioners and create a little profile for each of you and to share with you, to share with the rest of the city your favorite aspects of the park system. We're also, asking volunteers, city staff, maintenance crews, and individual park users who want to share their likes about the park system. In addition to more of the web and digital tools of our community involvement toolkit, we'll be using flyers, mailers, encouraging phone surveys if those residents prefer to take a survey on the phone. We had this idea of doing outdoor public galleries during COVID. We would love to do neighborhood roundtables, talk with key stakeholders, and do a socially distanced park walk and talk where we might bring a smaller group of stakeholders, neighborhood groups, and talk about parks in person in real time. Again, that's with Alameda Health orders standing.
So just to kind of sum this up is that we have these 4 phases, and we are, let's say, 90% through our learning phase. And this kind of meeting with you folks is really the kind of the cherry on that top of learning, and that we want to hear about any more that we need to know about the park system and the history. But it is also that kind of right in between where we are moving into the kind of workshop phase where we're going to start actively engaging the citizens of Albany. But this is also teed up for you folks so that we can kind of hear your wants and desires as we move forward through the kind of workshop phase. And so, we're excited to answer any questions and just really have a more conversation, I think, about not only the process, but also just kind of using this as a time to get your input as well. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you. So, staff, correct me if I'm wrong, but we have first commission questions for the speakers, and then public comment, and then discussion amongst the commissioners. Does that sound right?
Yes.
Right. So, if you could maybe stop sharing your screen, that will help me. Okay, thank you. So open up to commissioner questions. What questions do commissioners have? And then we'll get to public comment. Commissioner Kent, then Abbott, then Beal.
So Fielding Field wasn't on the list. Is that owned by the university or the city? That's the softball soccer field down in the corner of the University Village.
Yeah, that's owned by the university.
University, okay. I know the city played a big role in developing that, but all right. The other one was you had the open space calculation as 2.27 acres per 1,000 residents. How does that compare to other communities? Are we well served with parks or underserved?
That's a great question. I think that's something we can look at for especially around the surrounding communities.
And that includes the bulb, right?
Yes, that includes the bulb, as well as Alameda School District and UC Village.
Okay, so yeah, even the sports fields. Okay, great. And then one other just minor thing, when you listed Memorial Park and some of the improvements, I think the turf on some of the parks is really pretty rough. It's so hard, and when falls, they almost break their knees. Yeah. So it might be something to look at.
Great.
Okay, then we had Commissioner Abbott, then Commissioner Beal.
Just a real, pragmatic question. Will we have access to that slide deck? Can you share that slide deck? Because I'd like to have that.
Of course.
And then
Yes.
I just want to be sure we all understand that when you say you're including the Albany bulb in the acres per thousand number, that's not the beach. You're just talking about, is that number all the park area, or is that only the park area that Albany controls?
Right, so that data point came from the Albany general plan, and it does include the state as well as the East Bay regional parks as well.
So it's pretty much all, and that makes sense. I mean, that's the
Right.
practical measurement. I just wanted some clarity on that. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you, Commissioner Beal.
Yeah, I guess what I want to know more about, because it really stood out in your presentation. It's something that's been a theme through some of the communications in the community. This idea of connectivity and accessibility, and the way you showed it in the map with the creeks. I guess what I want to know about is how you can delve into more of these creeks and pathways, how they contribute to the social structure of the city. Like, because people can get around more in a socially connected way. I'd be interested to see how we can delve more into that.
I think we support that idea. And I think that's why we intentionally have them on the map, because, not only are they kind of interesting, corridors for ecology, I think they're interesting corridors for people too. And it would be actually really cool if we could go back 150 years and like those all through the East Bay, you could imagine all these little creeks as these kind of public parks that moved to the Bay. That would be fantastic, but we're long gone since that. But there's a way of finding ways to reinvent that as an idea. So I think that's what this process is intent to kind of investigate.
Okay, other questions from commissioners? Commissioner Cheng Frank.
Hi, thanks. First of all, thanks for the presentation. It's a great slide deck, really informative. I do have a couple of questions regarding connectivity. I'm wondering how that might relate to like also distance from a park, because and actually specifically about recreational distance. So for example, even though you might have like a basketball court at Ocean View, if you live on the totally, if you live next to Terrace Park, you don't really have access to a full basketball court, that kind of difference. So just as you're thinking about rating connectivity, it's also interesting to think about like what amenities are at each one of the park sites. And I've read some studies about like how long it takes to walk somewhere really affects how often somebody uses a park. So that's one of my questions there. And then also I'm wondering how the school district, I know you're not, many people use school sites as parks, and on the weekends anyway. Was that in the calculation? And I wonder how that could be integrated or not in the master plan.
I would defer to Dave on how we calculated that. I would assume we kind of stayed away from the schools, but I don't know. But I think it's a sort of an interesting idea in the way that we calculate open space, but also programming, like you just said. For instance, if there is a basketball court in the far northern part, but yet you live a block from a basketball court at a school, like where that measurement comes in could be something interesting actually. So, and maybe there's a way of showing that in a way, I guess.
I think that is exactly it, showing the other recreational facilities. I mean, Commissioner Kent even mentioned UC Village softball, and quite literally the general plan does mention, other recreational facilities not owned by the city. I guess for this master plan, we're trying to identify improvements for the city to undergo. But that's, I think, a map of showing recreation across the system, regardless of ownership is probably key.
Okay, Commissioner Armendariz.
Hi, I have a question about, well, I'm wondering, you talked about places that analysis that you've done looking at what exists, and I'm just curious, will there be, or has there been any analysis of pieces of land that could be park in Albany? I don't know if that is something that is possible, but I'm just curious about that.
I mean, that would be, yeah, I mean, I think that could be an opportunity for sure. I'm assuming that most of the land would have to be owned by the public, correct? I mean, that would be the easiest way. I know hence why Caltrans is an interesting opportunity, though it does have challenges because it is owned by a different public agency. Short of acquiring land or yeah, I mean, providing dedication for parkland, I think those are the two avenues: to acquire land and to get outside dedication.
I think as another topic of that is, and it is kind of an interesting, and it has been done in other places, is looking at the public right of way that the public works has, and maybe, I'm just saying, maybe there are I don't want to say abandoned right of ways, but parcels that are near the right of way, or that are streets that are not currently being used as streets, but they're in the public right of way, could be an interesting. And I like an example, I'm just throwing it out there, is like at the very far north reach of Madison Street, like maybe there's the right of way extends in some way, and that could become like a parklet. I don't know where these are. I'm just spitballing here basically, but I think that's a possibility, and I think an interesting thing to look at too.
Okay, Commissioner Price, and then Commissioner Chang Frank.
Yeah, thanks to you both very much. One thing I've just been thinking about is what about recommendations for management and maintenance practices, especially on sites that have kind of overlapping jurisdictions or like adjacent jurisdictions, and say with UC Village or Berkeley, and kind of recommendations for long-term relationships there, or management.
Well, I was taking too many notes. Could you kind of restate that question again?
It might be implicit in what you're covering in your presentation, but I'm just thinking about places like the creeks and the Bulb, where there's sort of adjacent or overlapping jurisdictions on those sites, and how to navigate, recommendations for maintenance and management in the long term.
Yes, I think that is something that we will touch upon as we continue this process. I think there are interesting potentials for the UC Village, but I think that it's figuring out or not figuring out, I don't know, but of how we work with those agencies. And so I think that is something that we're eager to look into. I don't want to promise anything though.
Okay, Commissioner Chang Frank.
Thanks. It's very interesting. I'm excited that you all are from Berkeley and that you're also a commissioner, Brennan, at Berkeley for parks. I'm wondering about how, I guess I'm wondering if, when this question of equity comes up a lot, about the acreage that's used for certain sports versus others, and how that's factored into play. So I'm not wanting to make a political statement right now, but there are, there's some sports that just take more acreage than others. And how do we navigate that more multi-use if possible, just compromise, because it just does seem like, we conventionally have these specific sports always in mind when we create parks, and they take up like 75%. You see what I'm saying? So I'm curious how you handle that, navigate that in this time as population's getting denser and we don't have more, unless we buy more land, we got what we got. So
yeah, I think it's just being creative. That's the creative part to this is, well, I mean, I'm trying to thumb to an example of that is I'm gonna butcher it. Is it Peggy Thompson? Peggy, right? Is it, while it's still developing, there's maybe the park is not as efficient as it could be, and maybe it doesn't need to be efficient. But also there's maybe things around Memorial Park as well. But I think a slight segue is, I think that maybe that's what we hope to get to as well, is asking those kind of hard questions and saying, is this park program benefiting the most that it can, and maybe it's not. And so we find, and we're, through this process, we're going to inevitably find maybe another program that is lacking, and that maybe there is some way of having a win-win in a sense of something that is old and tired and not getting very much use, but we have a steward that really is looking to step up and step in. And I think I just use that word, and it's my favorite word kind of, but that's, I think, the other thing about this process that we are with, I think the outreach that we hope to do is to find those park stewards, because frankly, that's what gives the energy to all of our parks, are the people that care about the parks. And so that's the kind of, important thing we hope to do with this process as well.
Okay. And I had a few questions. One was this has been asked a little bit, but just to get the active recreation areas was listed as 43. How did you guys get to that number? If you just look at city parks, it's quite a bit less than that, but does that include all the little zones in University Village, or does that include all those?
That's correct. That was from the UC Village calculations as well. It was a footnote that stated that it's Albany Unified School District, UC Village, included in that active recreation.
Okay. And then another question was, were you aware that there's also Caltrans land besides the parcel you highlighted? There's also a parcel just northeast of that across Cleveland, adjacent to Pierce Street Park, that this commission has considered for other projects?
I wasn't aware of that. I would love.
Is that the lower triangle? Is that the lower triangle on the left-hand side as the off-ramp, or?
There is a triangle north of the park that's even with the park. That's another place that is city land that we want to make sure gets covered by this. But there's also the parcel just west down. There's a steep hill there if you're there, but yeah, it's between Cleveland and Pierce Street Park, below the.
You're indicating this area?
Yes, underneath that. Yeah. Okay. And then another question was for outreach. I was looking at the master plan from 2004 and looking at the number of planned community engagement activities that are here for this one in 2021. And, it was set up based on the contract and all, but I was wondering if maybe staff can help answer this question, is in what way is outreach happening? I see in the 2004 master plan, for example, there was a household survey done with a random sampling of houses, and over 300 homes responded on what they wanted in the parks. It says there were 15 Parks and Rec Commission meetings devoted to the master plan. And I think we're going to have about two or three, maybe four. And then it says there was a separate meeting just for sports field user groups to get feedback. So looks like there was quite a bit more So I was wondering if either the consultants or staff could comment on either how interest groups will be reached out to, or how the public can be engaged, what modes of communication will be used.
Excuse me, I'll attempt to answer that. So that is true. We are only having we're gonna have 4, I think it's 4. It'll probably be slightly more than that. It's after you count a couple of city council presentations that we intend to have. So I think I'll step back a little bit. A little bit of our strategy is to rely less on the Zoom workshops or the big community workshops to get information. We found that they are successful in having a dialogue, but what we have found to be more successful is using the online social media and you can judge the value on how much information and the quality of that information as well. But I think it was really the last slide of ours, is I think where we hope to have the kind of where the rubber meets the road, in that we are intending to do flyers, a mailer, a survey. We hope to have kind of outdoor public galleries that we intend to do at certain parks to solicit not only awareness, but also some feedback in those as well. And the idea being, if we put a big poster sign at Memorial Park, is that any one of the parents that is seeing it might be at least become more aware that, oh, there's a website I can go to, or I use my phone to scan something. And then the other thing is that I think we because of our proximity to Albany, is that we kind of intend to do, frankly, just kind of guerrilla, social engagement in, provided being COVID safe and everything, but is really, on our walks out in the parks, is to just talk to people. That seems to be the best way to get really good information, is actively talking to the people. And so I don't know if we're going to have 15 park meetings, but I think once you look at the entirety of the way that we're trying to get information and talk to people, I think we'll far exceed the number of interactions probably that the old master plan had.
So for social media, how do you intend people to interface with that? How do you intend to get feedback on people's wants and desires?
Yeah, so we've just started a website, and the website, I think, is going to be a place where we can, if you want to get in contact with us, there's ways to do that. There's a way to submit comments that you have. The Instagram kind of social media is also meant to kind of, the idea is to cast as wide a net to people so that they just at least know that this process is going on. I think that's really the impetus for the kind of social media and the digital kind of branding to everything, is to raise awareness that this process is going on, and then give people as many opportunities and places to get in contact with us as the team, to let those concerns and their ideas and their hopes for what the park system can be, and we're going to be then documenting all of those kind of individual communications as well.
I just want to mention that we haven't finalized the details yet, but this is the toolkit that we're intending to do. The surveying, the online surveys to the mailers, to the outdoor galleries. I mean, those details need to be worked out. However, I think we're really excited to start that process, and getting feedback from the commissioners will really aid us in that too.
Nextdoor can also send out messages by governmental bodies. Do you know, or does staff know, if that will be employed to get messages out about soliciting feedback and input?
We're planning on engaging with Jeremy Allen, who's in charge of City of Albany's Nextdoor. So using that as an avenue, as well as Albany E-News, to get the word out. So we're we're gearing up for that next phase.
Okay, and then how are you identifying stakeholders? And what kind of stakeholders are you envisioning or have you already identified?
We have a working list, certainly Friends of the Five Creeks, Friends of Albany Hill. You know, the Rotary Club seems to donate a lot of equipment and facilities to the park system. You know, again, we're still working out those stakeholders, but those who really are essential to the park system would be the first group of stakeholders that we reach out to.
And then if there's other groups that want to make sure they're at the table, how would they go about doing that?
You know, they could reach out to us on our website, most definitely. If you have folks who are really passionate about the Albany Park System, feel free to send us a message, fill out our contact form so you're always up to date on the newsletters, and stay tuned.
Okay, because there's always been mailing lists that the city has of, for example, if we're doing something with the dog park and Memorial Park, then okay, there's like a mailing list just for those folks. There's
Right.
people that are just with pickleball or just tennis or just, you know, so are those kind of groups things that you're communicating to staff about as well? Or you can communicate to staff about and find out those stakeholders?
Most definitely.
Yes.
Okay. I think that was it for.
One more comment. Sorry. One more comment. I noticed that on your Peggy Thompson's Pierce Street Park, you included the area that I think is designated for affordable housing in the calculation.
That's correct. I was unaware that there was affordable housing going into that lot portion. We do know that that parcel does belong to Albany, according to the GIS mapping.
Okay.
And again, it's another exciting group of park users to share a property line with Peggy Thompson. I think trying to find connection opportunities there, especially since there's already an asphalt pathway to that property, is a great potential.
And can you show that map of Pierce Street Park again? Because there's another parcel I wanted to make sure that, or ask if you were aware of. And that is to the right, which is to the north, the triangular portion. Yeah, so to the right of that.
I see.
My understanding beyond that fence, which is the white line you've drawn, is city-owned land that could potentially be developed, but people might want to put some sort of sound barrier or whatever kind of walls people put, you know, whatever. But that's something that my understanding is city-owned land that the city can decide. The master plan, if you weren't aware of it, it sounds like you might not have been, you know, should be factoring that in as well.
Great.
Other questions from commissioners before we get to public comment? And I can't see everybody, so okay, now maybe I can.
Okay, why don't you stop sharing?
Looks like there's no more questions, so let's turn to public comment. Looks like we have one person with their hand raised. A few more. Okay, so if we get 3 minutes and staff let the first person in. And Philip, you're on.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. It's very exciting to see us do this master plan. Couple areas I'd like to see covered. There are a lot of schools, not a lot, there are schools, both public and private, using Albany parks. So we don't know what the impact of those uses are on Albany parks and how they limit the public's use of Albany parks. So I'd like you to try to consider the impact from the schools. And with that, the impact of Albany UC Village, which is in Albany, as part of how much does that impact our park use? UC has a lot of land there that they don't develop or are not using for parks, for public use. But I think that we should reach out to UC there's actually a street next to the senior center that we put in there, the senior housing, that can be, it really doesn't do any, there's no use to it. That could be expanded into parkland. So there's parkland around there, open space around there we could develop into some type of use. One of the things that I think you have to be careful of is, you mentioned it, the pickleball users. You can't go to a park and interview pickleball users because we have no parks. We have very limited playtime at Ocean View, but that's not really being used because there's no setup there for pickleballers. So I don't know how you're going to interview pickleballers and the needs and the uses if we have no place to go play and be interviewed. I think you should look at Cedar Rose Park, which is a new pickleball facility, and how much that is being used, and use that and extrapolate from that into how much Ocean View would be used. The unfortunate thing about Cedar Rose is UC wants to shut it down, or I'm sorry, not UC. The city of Berkeley has gotten a lot of complaints from the neighbors about the noise. So we have to look at, pickleball players have to look at places where the noise playing pickleball does not affect the residential uses. So that limits where we can really have courts for use. And, I think what it's going to come down to is that Ocean View is a perfect place because there's no residential around it. Was a planning commissioner for over 15 years. I've been in sports for the last 25 years, and I've lived in Albany for 40 years. So I know this town. And so I'm glad you're looking at every little piece and corner of it to try to develop usable open space. And I think that Albany Hill should be looked at for some parklets up there too that can be leveled and made open space, not large open spaces, but small parklets on the hill. Thank you for your time, and I look forward. Notification. I hope you get notified. I've asked to be notified about these meetings. I didn't find out about it till this afternoon. And it wasn't a week ago I asked to be notified about these hearings, and still never got a notification. So
Thank you.
please be aware that people are not being notified.
Okay, next. Okay, Susan, you're on.
Yeah, hi. I just want to say thanks for the presentation, and that I think that the most important thing that the master plan can do is to identify the need for a focused vision plan and planning process for the Albany bulb, because in a general master planning process like this, you aren't going to be able to get into the level of detail that's needed. I'm the founder of Love the Bulb, which is an organization that has put on more than 50 events, and we run a native plant garden, and we do a lot of activities out at the Albany bulb. And we would love to work with you to get the word out. We have more than 700 members on our Facebook group. We have 1,300 people on our mailing list, our e-newsletter of people who love the bulb. And there's incredible opportunities at the bulb. And although we appreciate that you have given it the bulb an A on so many categories, there are actually some serious deficiencies and needs out there. And none of us are talking about making it manicured or overmanaged or paved over, but the connectivity, there's serious connectivity questions, conflicts at the Bay Trail, accessibility. There are ways that people with mobility limitations who love the challenge of getting out to the bulb, small changes could make the place more accessible for them. A little bit of infrastructure for stewardship. There's so much volunteer stewardship going on out there. It would be great to have some storage for tools. A little bit of indoor space would make a huge difference for education out there. I just want to identify that in your list of projects, your initial lists of projects that you had, that the bulb was 100% absent from that list. I'm curious why that is. And I'd also like to point out that you mentioned, the other existing plans that, affect the Parks Master Plan, such as the city general plan. in terms of parks development, the bulb is absent from that. In the arts plan for the master plan for the city, the bulb is completely absent from that. And so I think it's time for the city to just see the incredible potential of the bulb and look closely at it. And the most important thing that this master plan can say is that the bulb is valuable and it's part of the city, and it deserves attention. So thank you for giving it the attention it deserves. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Next, Susan, you're next. You're on.
Susan Schwartz this time. Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thanks. So I'm still Susan Schwartz, president of Friends of Five Creeks, which is about now celebrating 25 years since our founding in Albany. You have our letter, which is quite detailed in its initial suggestion for this parks plan that we very much look forward to contributing to. I hope you will read it carefully and make sure that the consultants read it carefully. I'm not going to talk about it all tonight. I couldn't possibly begin. We've been dealing with the real challenges of bringing urban nature back for 25 years, and I think we can make some real contributions. I want to speak about just two ideas. Aside from seconding a lot of what Susan just said, I would echo the omissions of these natural areas from Albany, what Albany's various documents. This plan should deal prominently with how Albany's amazing trove of natural areas, the Bulb, Albany Hill, the creeks along two of the borders, can educate, engage, and inspire the public, especially young people, to understand and care for our natural world. Our future depends on this. It's not just play. Now, specifically regarding Codornices Creek, this plan needs to deal realistically with that creek, which has so far been ignored in everything from Albany's general plan to this commission's work plan, and as Susan mentioned, the RFP for your project. Albany needs to complete the Codornices Creekside Trail. This will make it easier for kids to reach the sports fields, car-free, safely. When the Gilman Roundabout is built, which is supposed to start this summer, it will make it easier and safer to reach the Waterfront and Bay Trail by foot and bike, and everyone will be able to enjoy the fascination, excitement, peace, and respite of just walking along a creek. Now, Albany, this is more specific about administration. Albany has very generously taken on major responsibility for the complicated management of this area by Albany, Berkeley, and UC Berkeley, and if you're realistic, and by Friends of Five Creeks. We can't continue forever the level of effort that is needed to make this work. The city needs to ensure that after millions have been spent and thousands of dollars of its staff time to restore that creek, that there are structures that will make administration work economically and not have it be abandoned the way Cerrito Creek and Codornices Creek were before. Once again, sorry, that is the reality of the situation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, Kathryn, you're up.
Hi, so I'm Katherine Stein. I'm an Albany resident. I live in the Gateview complex off of Pierce Street. Thank you for the presentation, and it's a super exciting time for our parks and for our city. I just wanted to note one thing very quickly before the main points I wanted to make is it was pretty impressive to see that we have 25% of our population is kids. So I would consider that in your stakeholder outreach. Consider how you're going to connect with families and kids because that's really big and that's really important. So I think I'm especially heartened that you have acknowledged that there's work yet to be done with Pierce Street Park. My family uses that park and it's a really great start. It's very wide open. It could certainly use a lot more shade, but I think what the untapped potential that really lies in Pierce Street Park to me is, the play structure is fantastic. The field is it's starting to be used, and that's really cool and exciting. But we have a lot of potential to connect to either that, underpass area, and especially through onto the Bay Trail, and to really activate the space that we could be using from some continuity from that space all the way through to the bulb. I can note that as a family living very nearby, Pierce Street is extraordinarily treacherous for pedestrians and bicyclists alike, and I would like for you to consider some way of making connections for pedestrians and bicyclists, some kind of pathway. I think I've seen plans like this from years past that have never come to fruition, and I think there's just a lot of untapped potential there, especially potentially with that little triangle that we pointed out earlier. There's potential there as well. And then I know that this is later on the agenda tonight, but just want to acknowledge that Albany Hill is also a really fantastic resource. It's used a lot now during lockdowns. It's been used a lot by families around here. And it's an extraordinarily beautiful, and just we're really lucky to have that as a resource for our community. I'd love to hear about how the pending challenges of this fungus for the eucalyptus trees is going to be mitigated, and having that somehow brought into the plan to think about bringing back native vegetation in such a way that really acknowledges that space and deals with the complexities that we're going to be facing sooner or later with these trees that are starting to turn brown and really crispy. It's actually pretty scary for fire hazards, but also in terms of beautification of the space. So with that, I'll end. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Aaron, you're on.
Hi, thanks. And thank you for the presentation. This is very exciting. I just want to put a word in for Memorial Park. It's it's the largest and sort of central park here in Albany, and everything sort of it's the hub in a lot of ways. And there's a lack of basketball courts at Memorial Park. The school district had 4 up last year and then took them down to put up the trailers, and they have 2 up now, but they're really not enough to serve all the people there. I go down there, almost daily or several times a week with my kids, and you can't even get onto a court, and it's during COVID time. I think once things open up, it'll be a lot busier. So it's just one of those things that the kids use a lot, and it's a shame that there's such a lack of just a lack of courts for kids to play on. It's definitely the most used thing. If you go down there, the tennis courts can be empty, but there are always people on those basketball hoops. And so it would be great if we could if we could find a way to have some multi-use courts down there that could integrate that a bit more, because it's a lot of kids in the area, and it's great to give them something to do. So yeah, multi-use basketball courts at Memorial Park. I just love to plug that. Thank you guys for what you're doing.
Okay, thank you. Next up we have Anne. Anne, you're on.
Thank you. I'm Anne Oganowski. I'm a volunteer with Friends of Five Creeks, and I don't speak with the knowledge that Susan does, but from just a volunteer perspective, what it strikes me is in the last week, I've spent over 6 hours working along either Cordonesis or Cerrito Creek, and I did not realize what a boon it could be when the weather is hot. There were some very hot days, and someone said, how in the world could you do that? It was extremely pleasant. So in these days when we're talking about extreme drought and increased temperatures, I think we can also look at the parks, especially along creek sides, as real havens for people, to be relieved from the pressures of the heat. It would mean that in the planning, you might have to look at a little bit more benches, more places for people to actually be, but it made a huge difference to be at the creek sides on those really hot days. The other thing I wonder is if a way to educate people about the importance of the parks, of nature, the environment, etc., is through the use of volunteers. And while I know there are volunteer groups like Friends of Five Creeks and the Friends of Albany Hill, if there's a little more coordination by the city, I think it would help to perpetuate the involvement with nature. It would perhaps lessen the possibility of, when volunteers that are my age pass on, that there are other people that can come behind and have been kind of brought up in that and know what's going on and what could be done. And let's see, finally, I just want to say that I looked up the word maintain, and you probably already know this, that it means to hold in hand and to support. And I think it's very important that we take that seriously, that this is not something that can be dropped or we let slip through, that element of continuity, of continued approach to working in the parks is so crucial. I mean, again, as a volunteer, sometimes it can be very disheartening to pick up litter and to pick up litter at the same time, the same place every time I go back to a place. But still, I think it shows people that, there is a standard of care, and it's important to preserve that. So thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you. Next we have David, you're on.
And I live near Memorial Park, and me and my friends go to Memorial Park a lot, and we don't really, and like lots of times we just have to go home because there's the hoops aren't open, and there's like a line, and we see other people there waiting for the hoops to be open, and it would just be really nice. So when we can start having games more frequently after shelter in place, for there to be more hoops so we could get on.
Okay, thank you. All right, seeing no more speakers, let's turn it back to the commission to discuss with our consultants and city staff other aspects of this. So which commissioners have something they would like to discuss? Okay, I'll start. It's kind of more questions, but I noticed in the original work plan, not the original, the current Parks Master Plan from 2004, one of the goals, goal 5, says, I'm wondering if this is going to be part of the scope or not, establish an integrated comprehensive system of pedestrian and bike routes linking all neighborhoods and schools to recreational facilities throughout the city, including the waterfront. And it sounds like the two of you did that bicycle ride, sort of trying to get a feel for that. Is that something that's part of the your scope of work?
David, do you want to take it or should I? I think that there's, if I'm correct, I think there currently is a transportation planning that's happening right now that is identifying a future, bike network and pedestrian networks. So while we're not doing it together, I really see it as a dovetail and as a supporting thing for us. And I think similarly, in the way that we have talked about the importance of the creeks, you know, I too see an immense opportunity with those as these really rich ecological areas, but also ways of connecting things. And so I think kind of we aren't specifically probably going to be recommending adding bike lanes or how to do that. I think, but we are paying very much attention to the study that is currently happening. Dave, do you want to enrich that with?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there are moments and gaps that we can identify and include into the master plan as an opportunity to connect to the larger bike system. I've been thinking about that all day. I mean, there's, I think there's like small tweaks here and there where, oh, I wish we could just cut through the elementary school to get to the park, you know, in a safer way rather than on Buchanan. You know, there's probably going to have to be larger discussions to see if that's even feasible. But, you know, that would be a great goal.
Mm-hmm. And you guys did mention wayfinding signage. Is that going to be one of the sections of your report?
I think we'll provide how to do the wayfinding signage. Really, I think some of the existing signage is actually pretty great. So building on that existing system is probably ideal. The one off the top of my head is Bonita Avenue along the Albany Greenway. You know, you saw that and also such a clear sign that you kind of knew the direction. So I think it's better to inventory the existing signage system. I know the active transportation plan has identified signage, and to build onto that wayfinding system as well.
Some other things to consider are with new development. You mentioned population growth, and there's my understanding is there's certain regions of the city that will see the most population growth, but potentially likely, including right now where Albany Bowl is. There's a plan for 200 plus units, probably 500 people. And I live right near it, and it's basically a parks desert, except for Albany Hill. And there's also major roads, like you'd have to cross like San Pablo and Buchanan to get to any school playgrounds or other playgrounds. And then the San Pablo specific plan talks about doing a lot more high density developments along San Pablo. And then University Village is right now planning an roughly 800 student housing development that is like 4% of the city's population, you know, in that one location. And, you know, how is that going to impact parks? How can those folks, you know, think about those impacts and up and down San Pablo Avenue for increases in population, I would think, for the most part. Other discussion topics people had.
Couple items.
Commissioner Kent.
Well, there's mentioned some of these are mentioned, but I want to go back to them. Like the idea of land purchases. There are some lots that possibly are some areas that could be purchased, but there's also pieces of property the city's already owned that they're not really using very well. And I'm thinking a small one might be Calhoun Court, which used to be the on-ramp to 80, and now it's just huge wide ramp. It's just basically a driveway for 3 or 4 homes, and that there's probably several thousand feet there that could be asphalt taken up and turned into pocket park of some sort. It's not in a key area where a lot of people are, so I'm not sure the cost value, but there's probably other places like that around town where there's lots of asphalt where it's not needed. There's also there's also touched upon, for instance, on Albany Hill, where we assume it's all a hill, but a lot of it's private property. I'm not sure what those agreements are, whether are those secure agreements where they can't develop it, or are they loose agreements? It'd be nice if we could lock those in so we know it's open space guarantee for the city. Maybe it's already in place, but I don't know, and it would be worth a check going into. I'm not in this being that this is a master plan. I don't know what detail that you complete this project, whether you really look at the contracts of our agreements with landowners or not. The other, I think, is a lost opportunity in a lot of parks is a poor facility or facilities that are designed for one use, or they only work for part of the season. I think this is evident in parts of our parks that get waterlogged and you can't use them for 6 months, or they're just poorly planned, so you have a big vacant area that it's too small for kicking a ball around, but it's really in a funny place that nobody wants to picnic. And so there's some design aspects that can be improved and really enhance the overall function of the parks. And Memorial Park's a key example of that. Schools was mentioned. I think that's really crucial. There's Cornell is a lot. I think that's closed sometimes and open sometimes. I'm not sure the rules around that. Whereas Memorial's open almost all the time, used quite a bit. Ocean View is open all the time. Right now it's closed. That is maybe one reason so much pressure on the hoops in Memorial Park, because there's half a dozen hoops there that are missing. Then, as Susan Schwartz mentioned, I think that's a crucial statement. We tend to fund maintenance on traditional parks, and we're missing all of those open spaces that really, if not maintained, will just cede back to no man's land or wild or jungled areas. So how do we incorporate that as parkland, even though it's not in a traditional park sense, but is a valuable open space? Those are my comments.
Okay, others. Commissioner Beal.
So I guess two themes I saw in the public comment and also from this presentation. I already brought up the connectivity, but also it looks to me like Memorial Park is a park we need to put some more effort into because of its central nature. And if we're talking about this connectivity, I guess I'm viewing the park system now as kind of a hub and spoke model, and that we've got these parks and we want people to get in between them. But the creeks, so I think we need to develop the pathways along the creeks. But with the park, and there's a lot of mention of pickleball. So what I'd like to see explored, if there's a way to get some pickleball courts in Memorial Park in a place where it wouldn't be a noise factor. It seems to me it's like a square block park adjacent to the high school, that maybe there's somewhere in there where it would be up against the high school or in the middle of the park where it's surrounded by buildings where maybe the noise wouldn't be a factor. But I'd like to see a central place in Albany where the pickleball, and what I would say about it is I attended a pickleball court opening in San Francisco. It really was, it really is an enthusiastic kind of thing, and that the point that was made about it is how inclusive of the sport is, that anyone can play it through a variety of ages. So that's what I wanted to say. So yeah, go ahead, Brent.
Hey, other comments? Let's see. I would add one thing about Memorial Park. Well, what Commissioner Kent said about a couple of things about Memorial Park. One is when Commissioner Kent said about seasonal use. So, for example, the dog park and other it's considered a play field because it's grass, and other play fields just shut down for a number of months in the year. So if there's suggestions come out for that, I don't know what level of detail you're getting at, which is like wood chips versus other sorts of surfaces that dog parks work well for. Another thing about Memorial Park is that people will say it's a central park, it's central to the city, but as somebody who doesn't live anywhere near it, and if you look at it on a map, I'm looking at a map right now with the Albany borders. It's literally half a block from El Cerrito, and then like 3 short blocks from another part of El Cerrito. So it's really in the northeast corner of the city. People who live near it will say, oh, it's very central. And, you know, we really need to focus on Memorial Park. And it's a great resource. It's a really great park. My family would make the trek to it with our double stroller, and, you know, we would get over there. But you know, keep in mind, when people say it's central, it is important to the city and a lot happens there, but it's actually, you know, in one tiny little corner of the city. Other comments? Commissioner Abbott.
Sorry, I had a dog emergency I had to take care of, so I'm back now. So a few things I wanted to say, and just provide a little perspective, I think historically, or a little bit, and this applies kind of to both the bulb and to the creeks. For the bulb, and forgive me for this term, but I've been watching Game of Thrones lately, and it's really kind of in my head. But the bulb has always kind of been the bastard stepchild. We really didn't know what to do with it. Nobody really appreciated it. A neighbor and friend of mine recently called about the beach, called East Bay Regional Parks, and they couldn't care less about that beach. They don't care about Albany Beach. They're not going to change anything. I would really like to see Albany claim the bulb. I'd really like, it's so unique. It's such a jewel. There's nothing else like it that I've ever experienced. I really want us to claim that and own it and improve it without kind of undermining how unique it is. And I think kind of the same thing can be said for the creeks. Historically, they were just ignored, and I really want us to embrace them and kind of allow them to realize their potential to be these jewels that can. I love the comment that it's cool there on a hot day. That is a fabulous observation. We're going to have a lot of hot days coming up, and I think that's a great observation. So I just wanted to kind of emphasize that these have been ignored. And there's, you know, talk about low-hanging fruit. There's so much that could be done pretty easily to dramatically improve those. And then I think just kind of a general comment, and I'm sure this is not unique in any way, but Albany is very constrained in resources, particularly when you're talking about open space. Just in these comments, you've heard a little bit about people competing for this space. And that's going to be what this is all about, I think. And so finding any opportunity to expand space and kind of keep in mind, I think Brian, you know, kind of said over by the, I'm sorry, Commissioner Martin, over by the Albany Bowl development, there's not a park. Well, there is. There's the creek goes right by there. He meant like play fields. He meant something that you could go to and kids would play on. And so kind of keeping that sort of distinction in mind. So, you know, again, I don't mean, I'm sure this is your job, but juggling competition for space. And maybe one of the most valuable things you can do is help us chart a path for how to make those decisions. And I think those are my comments for now. Thank you. I very much appreciated your presentation.
Okay. I had a question for staff. The workshops that were mentioned, is there a role? Can commissioners attend? Can commissioners provide input? Are commissioners featured? Like who's running those? Is it going to be a Zoom meeting with certain panelists? Like how is that? Or maybe the consultants know how the workshops will be run.
I'll let staff answer the question. No,
You're punting back. Yeah, I think the commissioners are invited to all of the indoor, outdoor, virtual community workshops, and the one of the things that stood out for Groundworks in their RFP is that they had such a diverse outreach plan, and so I think commissioners should be invited to attend or provide input to any number of them. They'll be back to the commission meetings. They'll also be going to council, and those are on the schedule as well. So absolutely.
And I will pile on top of that of like, is certainly, there was a couple of comments about notification. Go on to the website that we have set up, put your email in there, and I promise you, you will get an email and be notified. Secondarily, while I'm not a resident of Albany, I am on Solano Avenue and I'm in the parks all the time. If you see me, grab me. And I'm happy to talk to you. If you don't remember my name, just be like, hey, you're that guy that's doing the thing, and I want to talk to you. I don't want to be, in a way that we just want to be like this. It would be I don't know if I really want to say this, but it would be a failure on our part. And I don't want to have any intent on that, is that at the end of this process that we have people say, I never heard about any of these things. Like we want to be as open, and we want to communicate with as many people as possible, with obviously within limits. But I still also know that at the end of the process, there will people that will show up and say, I didn't know about any of these things. So, but we'll have all of you as our support to say, no, they did a lot of this work. And so that's our intent, basically.
And Brennan, to add to what you're saying too, the commission should definitely share the URL, the Instagram, share that, put that on your social media, help spread the word. That will only help increase our reach.
And then if I can add also, if you're already signed up for our e-notification system, you can go back and now toggle Parks Master Plan, so that whenever there's a meeting or a workshop, you can, you will receive the notice via email. And if you're not signed up for e-notification, you should sign up for city e-notification, and we'll make sure that and toggle Parks Master Plan update. And you'll be able to receive emails when there are events around the Parks Master Plan.
And I want to say one more thing. I thought that was so cool that David Frank, a little kid, got on. I think that's awesome. I'm a huge supporter. I don't know if you saw my little kid, 8-year-old, he walked in. So I think that as well, there was a comment, 25% of the kids' residents are kids. I'm a kid at heart. So I'm looking forward to that kind of engagement. If we're not having fun, we should just pack it up.
Okay, well, seeing no more comments and questions, I'd like to thank the speakers and wish them luck with their efforts. And we look forward to the next event, which was that mid-June workshop. Is that right?
David?
That's correct. June 13th is our next workshop. I'm sure the Albany e-news notification will assist you.
All right. So next up on item 6, we have discussion of possible action on matters related to the following items. 6.1, tree removal and urban forestry update. John Hockridge, urban forester, and Margo Cunningham, natural areas coordinator. Eucalyptus disease study on Albany Hill.
I'm promoted to panelist right now.
Thank you.
Technical difficulties. John. John is here, and I'm promoting Margo. Sorry about that, everyone.
There we go. Where'd Margo go?
She'll make it, huh? Okay, let me try again. Okay, here comes Margo. Hey, Margo. Sorry about that.
Hello. Okay, I'll share my screen here. Okay, I'm Margo Cunningham, Natural Areas Coordinator for the City of Albany. And I'm here to tell you about a study that we're doing on the eucalyptus on Albany Hill, which, as you can see from these initial slides here, they're turning brown. So I took these photos from the El Cerrito BART station and the BART train. And this started, I noticed it starting in the fall. All of a sudden, all the trees just started turning brown. Leaves, branches, and limbs have been dying. Some entire trees appear to be dead. And this isn't good. It's creating increased risk to the public in terms of failures of trees and branches and potential fire risk. This is another view of the trees from El Cerrito. You can see a lot of thinning of leaves have fallen. They just don't look as healthy. This is a Google Earth shot showing where the Taft turnaround is, which I'm gonna now show slides from that. So this is a view of the trees at the Taft turnaround, which is the main entrance to Albany Hill Park. And you can see there are just some branches look dead. A lot of leaves have fallen. It just does not look good. This is a view along the crest near the summit, looking west. We've got a lot of brown leaves, again, dead branches, unhealthy looking trees. So what we're doing about this is the city has entered into a contract with a tree consulting firm to assess the health and safety of the eucalyptus, and they will make recommendations for management. And at the same time, we had plant pathologists from the Forest Service and from UC Berkeley contact us about wanting to sample the eucalyptus to see what may be causing these trees to decline. And so what we have happening here is this gentleman with his arm into the ground. This is Igor Lacan, urban forestry advisor for UC Extension. And he's measuring the soil moisture in the ground north of the Taft turnaround. And the man standing there is Steve Batchelder, and he's from the tree consulting firm. He dug the hole. And what they found is that the soil moisture is extremely low. And then on the right side, we've got Steve taking a core sample to measure the tree's starch reserves, which shows how much energy the tree has. And it was also very low. So the researcher, the plant pathologist who wants to sample the eucalyptus, his name is Matteo Garbalato. He is the director of the UC Berkeley Forest Pathology and Mycology Laboratory. And he has conducted a similar pathogen study on dying acacia in the Bay Area. And he's considered the authority on sudden oak death. And what he wants to do is that he wants to sample trees here on the hill that are about 10 inches in diameter, symptomatic but still alive, and preferably not immediately adjacent to one another. So we chose an area on the hill where trees are exhibiting symptoms of decline, but away from monarch clustering habitat. So this area is around and north of the Taft turnaround. So these are possible trees that we would like Matteo to sample, and they're all multi-trunk trees. So we're not actually removing a whole tree, just a section of the tree. And that's what we want to prioritize. These particular ones in this photo are just north of the turnaround. And Mateo has requested sampling 4. These are some other ones that are on the old trail alignment between Taft and Jackson. And then these are multi-trunk trees on the southeast and southwest sides of the turnaround. So we won't cut sections of trees near where Monarchs cluster, which is at and near the summit. And this work is scheduled for next week. And there's more details in the staff report that we submitted. So I'll take any questions that people have.
Okay, thank you. So let's get questions for on the presentation, then we'll go to public comment and then come back to discussion. Commissioner Beal and Commissioner Kent.
Yeah, I guess my concern would be about the work that's going on. That it sounds like there's going to be some cutting going on, and that I guess just proper notice has been given to in the area, and that signs are posted wherever people will be able to go.
Okay, Kent.
But just if the water moisture is extremely low, it's the reason that's the issue, that they're in poor health. And if you find there's a disease they have because they're in poor health, I mean, what is the solution? I guess that's going to be determined. It seems obvious until they have water, they're not going to get better. So I'm not sure. What are we going to get from this report that's going to, how can we act on? It might be premature to ask, but it might be premature to kind of come up with a solution. But I can't imagine they're going to say other than it needs water.
Oh, we're going to understand what really the problem is. We have some of the top people in the field looking at this. Garbalato, Igor, Steve Batchelor are all pretty well-known names in arboriculture. So we want to see what they have to say. Steve Batchelder is doing the complete study on the hill. Garbalato is going to look specifically at the whatever the pathogen is, he wants to identify it. And then from that, it's hard to say, but I think we find out whether it's something that's going to maybe go away when we get some rain, if we get some rain, or something that we need to take more seriously. And right now, I think it's very serious right now. There's a lot of dry, dead, basically fuel up there. So we're going to have to figure out how we're going to deal with this. Eucalyptus trees will die back from various freeze to drought, whatever, and they come back. You know, you cut it to the ground and it sprouts back again. So I don't know if these trees are dying completely or not. And that's what basically we're going to find out what's going on up there, and then we decide what the next step is to take.
Okay, and a couple more comments. I know this is just a informational interview. Because I've noticed the same issue with a lot of trees on the hill, not just eucalyptus, but all the way down the sides of the hill and on the street. A lot of the trees are dying, and you see it all across the town. Basically, if you go to the Sprouts parking lot, all of those trees are dead. Obviously, they stopped irrigating, but there's no water in the ground. So, I mean, everything they planted there 5 years ago is dead.
They're coming back. Those are live oak, which it wasn't really the best. Not live oak, big leaf maple, a native. That's not really the best tree for an area that gets trampled a lot like that. And I think they weren't planted well. They weren't watered correctly. They weren't cared for. But they're starting to sprout out mostly from the stump. They're sprouting out and they're becoming little bushes there. But yeah, they're trees in general are stressed out everywhere you look. There's all kinds of problems going on all over the place. And but if you look at the hill and you look at one of the slides that Margo showed from the north, from El Cerrito looking south at the hill, you see the live oak forest on the north end. is fairly lush. There's a couple problems here. There's one tree that seems to be in decline there, but nothing too unusual, I would say, with that, which is unusual because a few years back, the live oaks were the trees we were very worried about because of sudden oak death. But I guess with the low rainfalls in the winter, it's not that much of an issue. It's still an issue, but for us on the hill, it doesn't seem to be too much of an issue. But compare those to the eucalyptus, and you could see a pretty big difference in health-wise between the two species. But yeah, trees are struggling all over. We've been putting out messages in the Albany news email newsletter that goes out every couple of weeks. We put out a reminder for people to order their trees, and it's something a lot of people don't do. And I try to get out and order the new trees that are planted, at least the city property trees, and encourage the property owners who applied to order their trees. Anyway, I'm going off topic, but it's related. But yeah, the eucalyptus are just the species that's really showing the stress right now. So.
Commissioner Abbott?
I just had a question about how old these trees are. Were these all naturally propagated? I know that initially they were planted, but are these all about the same age? Is lifetime playing into this, or?
I don't think so. I think they're varied ages up there. I went up earlier and looked at some, and I saw some really small 4 or 5 inch diameter, and then there's some 20, 30 inch diameter trees that are showing the same problems.
Great, thank you.
I think it's great that specialists are involved. I was wondering if you could give us a little more of the backstory as to how folks like these specialists, experts in the field, got involved in the project, and if the city's paying, or if this like research funded, or what?
The city is paying for the tree assessment by the tree consulting firm, but the researchers, they have their own money. It's actually a grant, I believe, from SFPUC that is funding their research. And they contacted the city because Albany Hill, everybody can see it from, as one of them said, we're in a fishbowl. So you can see Albany Hill from everywhere, and you see these brown trees. And I was actually contacted by the Forest Service plant pathologist when I was out working on Albany Hill.
It's an area. It's not just Albany Hill. It's a wide area issue. So people like Carvalado and Igor, I forget his last name, are always on top of these issues and involved. They want to know what's going on. So we're lucky to have them want to participate and find out what's happening there.
Other questions before we go to public comment? Okay, I had one question for staff. I didn't catch it. The agenda, I think it's missing the staff report. Is that something that can be added?
I see the staff report.
Do you see it?
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, maybe I'm looking at the wrong link.
yeah, because I also wanted to note that the minutes from last meeting, I did look, and those are there too, so we can go back and approve them.
Okay.
But maybe you have a wrong link?
I'm looking at an agenda, but it must not be the one with all the...
Do you want me to send you the link, or?
I will get it eventually.
Okay.
Let's go to public comment then. My bad.
At this point, I don't see any raised hands.
Okay, we'll come back to discussion. Any commissioners have things they want to discuss about the tree report? Okay, well, I guess what another question would be, Commissioner Kent already raised it to some extent, is what do the two staff feel the options might be if things are looking grim for the trees?
Well, some of them will have to be removed. I think that is something that is a real possibility. Other options are for where the monarchs cluster, since they like the eucalyptus, an option is to plant new eucalyptus there or to foster saplings that are there and to water them and make sure they get well established.
Yeah, I think also we will need to prioritize. We're going to have to look at the trees, see which ones look worse, see which ones could have the biggest effect if they fall down, or if they're along the road on that crest, which we could consider a fire break. We maybe have to clear that a little better, that sort of thing. So, I mean, right now, the entire hill is affected. And a big part of the problem here is that most of the hill, the west side of the hill, is not city property. And I don't know if those apartment complexes over there can do anything about it, have the money to do anything, care to do anything with that. So I don't know how we're going to approach that part of it. But as for the city part, I think we prioritize and we do what we can with our budget. We may need to look for more money if it is really serious and we have to do a lot more work than we hope right now up there.
Who would know the details of the agreements with those developments on Pierce Street? Because when you look at maps, my recollection is up the hill from those, it says something like private open space or something like that. Maybe
it's the commons. It's commons for the different apartments. It's labeled as commons. That's what I see anyway. And they typically kind of don't want to acknowledge that that's their property. I think I've gotten calls from people in the apartments telling me, "Oh, the trees are turning brown," and I say, "Well, that's the property of your apartment, HOA or whatever they have there." And they say, "No, it's on the other side of the fence." I said, "Well, it's still your property. There's a fence there, doesn't mean it's not your property over there. It still is." So we own basically the crest, from the north side down to the south side. We own the crest and the east side of the hill, but the larger portion of the hill is owned by either the apartments or the development company that owns the southwest section that it came to the commission a couple of years ago, plans to build some kind of housing there. And years back, there was some housing plans that were shot down there, but it's just been left vacant it's owned by a company that's hard to find where they are. Their address changes often. I've had to send them letters on a few occasions. So,
it's kind of interesting that, John, you're right, it's privately owned, but we like to include it as our open space. I mean, people walk through it. But when there's a problem, they own it. But when we want it for open space, we want it, it's kind of a funny line there. Maybe there's an arrangement that we can kind of if the city takes on the maintenance of it, they have full open, maybe I guess what I'm saying is maybe they don't want the land and the city does want the land. If they don't.
Maybe, but land is, not something to throw away that easily these days.
But if there's a maintenance, if there's a liability issue there because those trees die and there's a fire.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And I think we don't claim it as, well, in the past, it's been just kind of commonly considered open space for the city, but it's technically somebody else's property. So if someone were to break their leg walking down the hillside there, I don't think that would be the city's responsibility because it's not our property. The fire department has asked to have fire roads clear through that area because they need it. I'm not sure. I think that's a an entity that might need to get involved in this too. If we're looking at fire risk, which we are, I'm not sure what kind of agreements are or what kind of rights or lack of rights we have on that property.
Yeah, the city does do vegetation maintenance along the fire roads on that 11-acre property. We do that once a year, every year. And then in terms of just all the open space on the hill, we are going to be doing a fuel assessment of all of the open space on the hill, both public and private. So both city owned and then all the private open spaces and that 11-acre space. So I have reached out to the property managers on all these properties to get permission to do the fuel load study. So that will be coming up hopefully this summer. And then we'll hopefully be able to work with everybody on what to do about not just the eucalyptus, but the whole fire hazards on all of the hill.
So Commissioner Abbott.
It's kind of related to that, and I think you've just kind of partly answered my question, but I've been approached twice by different people, just absolutely terrified that right now, not this summer, not this fall, right now, a match could send up the whole city because this thing is like a bomb ready to go off. Now, maybe we need to talk to the fire department to get the answer, but do you think that's a realistic assessment? I mean, is it that acute, that critical right now? And if so, what can we do?
Good question.
I would say one of the people I've heard from is a certified arborist with a lot of experience, and the other is a firefighter with a lot of experience with wildfires. So that's where that's coming.
That's a tough question because you can't just go and cut down all the trees all at once. That's not going to happen. So that's why we're doing these studies to see what's going on and give us our options. And as John said, prioritize. I mean, that's all we can do.
I think for my part, I might put a little more urgency into it than what I was hearing about.
We have
I understand. I know it's not.
We've been working as fast as we can. You know, it takes time to get contracts going, and so.
Yeah, no, I understand, but yeah, very good. Fire doesn't care about contracts.
I know.
Part of this, the hills never considered wildland interface. You know, SRA, state responsibility areas, something like that. When we see the red flag warnings, we don't see a little red blotch over Albany Hill. We see it up in the East Bay Hills where there's more land where it could get out of control more easily. I think I'm not going to guarantee anything, but if there are fires pop up on the Albany Hill, there's a lot of eyes on that hill, and I'm hoping that if that does happen at some point, that we will be able to react to it quickly. We have the Albany Fire Department. If there's a big fire happening in our area, I'm sure we'll get El Cerrito, Richmond, Berkeley, whatever we need for assistance there. But sure, that's why we're looking at this. It's a bit scary, yes.
And the fire department, they have a new fire hydrant now on top of the hill, and they said they can just hook up hoses and they can spray the whole entire hill on all sides. So it sounds like they have a good handle on it.
I assume you've spoken to them about it, and they've said, well, they're not, I mean, they're concerned, but they don't think it's so acute, or they think they can handle it at this point.
I haven't actually spoken with the fire department recently.
Okay, sure, understood.
Along those lines, what about what do you see as the timeline? And the next we hear back, I think it would be good to hear from somebody about the ownership and the rights for maintaining the trees behind the uphill from the apartments, to hear more of the details of that and what the city's responsibility is as commissioners of the parks, you know, what our responsibility is for those lands as well as the ones that are clearly city land. I see Jeff Bond is on the call right now. You know, I don't know, but the next time we get a report, that would be good to hear. So what kind of timeline do you anticipate getting back to us on something?
Well, I would say in the next month or two, initial report about maybe high priority trees. And then in terms of the fuel assessment, that's going to be sometime this summer. And I can give an update on that too, as that is happening.
Okay. Other discussion items, questions? Commissioner Abbott.
I would just say that this isn't the first time. I think there's been some confusion, or we just don't have a lot of connection with those property owners. This might be a real opportunity to open some communication and maybe lock some things down, because there is a crucial risk there, and this might be a way to get their attention and get some clarity on these agreements.
Okay, well, if there's no further discussion, thank you, Margo and John, for that report. We look forward to hearing more very soon. Okay, and next on the agenda is item 2, approval of minutes. Because I was looking at the wrong version of the agenda. It's my mistake. So I'm assuming other people are looking at the correct one and can see it. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll move that we approve the minutes from April 8th.
I second.
And now I understand why I came on a minute late and you're already in public comment.
I second the motion.
Okay, we have a roll call.
Yes. Commissioner Abbott?
Yes.
Commissioner Mendries?
Yes.
Commissioner Beal?
Yes.
Commissioner Frank?
Yes.
Commissioner Frank? Oh, excuse me, Kent? Sorry. We mixed that up.
I think Commissioner Kent responded to Commissioner Frank, but I would just want to say abstain because I wasn't at the April meeting.
Sure. Okay. That is noted. Thank you. And Commissioner Price?
Yes.
And Chair Martin?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so next item is item number 7, future agenda items. Committee members announce requests for future agenda items. So who has things they would like to see on future meetings?
I don't know if it's agenda item, but it's just a kind of question. When are the parks fully open now with the COVID restrictions being pulled back? And if so, is the community garden part of that? Because I noticed when I went to go in the other day, they wouldn't allow me because it was still under quarantine or something. I thought that was odd, but wasn't going to question it.
The gardeners are definitely working in the garden. However, I'm not aware of if they're having open hours to the public at this point. I don't know.
I guess that's the question. Yeah. So what point does that get relaxed? Right. I know probably different because it's food, so it might be categorized slightly different.
Mm-hmm. We can check and get back to you. Absolutely. And then that will open. But parks are open at this point.
Okay. Agenda items. I see we have, for the consultant said that our July meeting will have our last meeting with them, I think. Is that right? Our next and last?
No, I believe it's just the second one. They'll be coming back at least one more time maybe twice. Is that right, Isabel?
Mhm. Yeah, that's correct. So the July meeting is a workshop. It's a workshop with the commission and the community. So that meeting is going to be entirely.
100%. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that also means we won't get a fuel load report in July.
Yeah, unless they can bring it to the June meeting, then it will have to be at the September meeting.
So I don't know if they're still on the call, but that would be good to communicate to John and
We
Margo.
will. Yeah. We
Okay.
will. Mm-hmm.
And then the consultant's timeline, I'm looking at it, didn't mention any more Parks and Rec meetings, but you think that that's in the...
Yeah, they'll come back with a final draft, of the work plan, of the master plan for the commission's review at the September or October meeting.
And they said they're going to work with us to work on the Prop 68 funds. And how do you anticipate that happening? Will that be a workshop related kind of thing, or?
It still needs to be defined with the consultant.
And you know how much money that is for those? There's like 2 pots of money, and how much we have to work with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's about $400,000 for the 2 pots.
Like under our purview, or for like programming, which really isn't as much of our purview.
Oh no, it's for projects, park projects.
Park projects.
So not programming. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that will be under our purview.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a timeline on that for the end of the year or something to decide on.
Yeah. Yeah. So basically, we will make sure that the application is completed with an approved project by the council, which will be recommended by the commission by the end of the year.
Okay. All right. Well, seeing no other requests for agenda items, let's move to the next item on the agenda, which is the next meeting, June 10th.
Member Price had a comment, I think, for the last agenda.
Oh, thank you. Yes, thank you. Good eye. Commissioner Price.
I was just looking at we had added a future agenda item to the last agenda about the present and future management of the bulb. And just wanted to make sure that's still on the docket and see if we can hear about that before the fall, since it seems like there's going to be sort of a lag, right? Since a lot of agendas are sort of filled up this summer or we're on hiatus.
And that's been noted. You're right. With the master plan, there's definitely a lot going on here coming up, but that's been noted, and we will definitely have the appropriate staff come to one of the meetings probably later this year and give an update on that as well. So absolutely.
Okay. All right. Well, it's okay now. Seeing no other. The next item is about the next meeting, June 10th. And after that is adjournment. So thank you all, and good luck to you, Eva.
Yeah.
Thanks, Eva.